Good afternoon, Bremer County and all of Iowa. This is Shawn and Emily coming to you from our inaugural Deciding Iowa video blog. We're here to give an update on the legislative actions and talk about the impact locally and for all of Iowa.
I'm Dr. Shawn Albrecht. I'm a cancer scientist, biochemistry professor, Waverly-Shellrock School Board member, and former House District 57 candidate.
And I'm Dr. Emily Babers. I'm an obstetrician gynecology physician. I'm a mom of three, and I'm a reproductive freedom advocate.
Well, Emily, this week is funnel week at the Capitol. This means that if a bill does not pass out of either the House or Senate committee by the end of this week, it is considered dead. There are a few exceptions, but a piece of legislation might actually come back as an amendment. But for sure, you need to circle March 7th as an important date for key bills to make it past committees in order to survive.
So basically, what you're saying is that we can expect to see the legislature try to funnel proof a lot of their legislation, pushing them through House and Senate committees. I feel overwhelmed just by the volume of bills so far, and it seems like the legislature is really motivated to pass some bills. Shall we just discuss those that are top of mind?
Absolutely. Well, let's start with the good. Senate File 265, co-sponsored by Sandy Salmon, and its twin bill, House File 331, co-sponsored by Pat Grassley, have both passed through committees with bipartisan support. So they're funnel proof. Many of you know that Waverly-Shellrock and Decorah have struggled mightily to find new conference homes for athletics. As a WSR school board member, I can attest we are at an impasse, especially with Mackenzie Snow, head of the Iowa Department of Education, upholding the meteor's decision to not let WSR into the WAMAC. So this bill would create an 18-member conference that would be in charge of, it'd be a realignment committee. For high school sports, the committee would take into consideration enrollment, travel distance, rivalries, athletic successes to ensure that all high schools have access to a conference. If passed, this will be a huge boost for WSR joining a new conference in the near future. So I'm happy to see this piece of legislation.
That's great news for the kids and the families of Waverly Shellrock, of which I am one too. I know that my kids, when they get old enough, are going to want to have people to compete against when they put their time and energy into sports. When I think about what I want the legislature to be working on, it's definitely falling into the class of how can we help families and make Iowa a better place to live, work, and raise a healthy family.
Yeah, I agree. And, unfortunately, looking and finding more good bills is hard. In fact, I'd like to maybe pivot a little bit and talk about Senator Sandy Salmon, who submitted a number of bills that target public libraries. And specifically, I want to focus on two of them. Senate File 235 and its companion, House File 274, would repeal Iowa Code 728.7. That's a mouthful. But basically, this code says that educational institutions and libraries using appropriate materials for educational purposes are exempt from obscenity laws. So the rationale of having this Iowa code is so that a biology teacher that was teaching reproductive, science or whatever wouldn't fall themselves, within the obscenity law.
And they can teach biologically appropriate content.
Exactly, without fear of reprisal. So Senator Salmon states that this bill will close a loophole for public libraries and institutions to maliciously exhibit pornography without consequences. It seems a little harsh, but she ignores the part that any material has to be, quote unquote, appropriate for educational purposes to be exempt. This bill is a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah.
Senate File 235 must be passed by the Senate Education Committee before March 7th to stay alive. Now, its twin in the lower chamber, House File 274, has already passed committee, which is to say it is final proof.
Yikes.
The other library-focused piece of legislation of Senator Salmon is one of a pair of bills under the heading Sandy Loves Lawsuits. Now, if passed, Senate File 347 would forbid public libraries from purchasing or disseminating materials with descriptions of visual depictions of sex acts as defined by Iowa Code Section 70217. This means books, magazines, papers, maps, journals, anything. To go further, it allows for a parent or guardian to sue a library if they knowingly provide those materials to a minor and don't remedy the situation within 30 days, with base civil awards to the parent or guardian of $10,000 or $20,000, depending on severity. I have many concerns with this bill, Emily. First, this is all very subjective. Whether a complaint falls within section 70217 and was knowingly shelved in the library, well, that's matter of opinion. And that means a public library might be compelled to aggressively limit their offerings, when in doubt, remove a book.
Exactly.
I can imagine a supporter of this bill confused when they walk in and realize they can no longer check out their favorite romance novel or look for that art history book. In second, and has been said by Representative Mattson, among others, public libraries are voluntary inquiries. No one is forcing anyone to check out specific books or materials. If you want to step back and look at where kids are seeing questionable materials, look at the cell phone. Look at what they have access to. Now, there is a place for some parental control. And, third, the subjective nature of this bill is a gateway for censorship, in my opinion,
Exactly.
which history has shown time and time again to be a slippery slope to societal implosion. Let me quote Potter Stewart: "Censorship reflects a society's lack of confidence in itself. We have strong laws already in place to keep truly non-educational pornography and other obscene materials out of our public library. I trust our professional librarians to obey those laws. We don't need to clutter our courts with overzealous lawsuits of questionable standing." Well, this bill is now awaiting passage by the Senate Local Government Committee in order to move on through final week.
Come on, Sandy. You don't need censorship in Iowa.
Absolutely.
This is silly.
Well, again, Sandy loves lawsuits. The other bill promoting parent or guardian lawsuits is Senate File 335. Now, this bill would allow a parent or guardian to sue school officials for violating Iowa code that prohibits school from advocating or acting on, quote, specific stereotyping and scapegoating towards others on the basis of demographic group or identity.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Once again, this is a subjective bill, meaning what should be considered a breach of Iowa code is ambiguous and opinion-based. In fact, Emily, it appears the impetus for this bill stems from a few parents being frustrated their complaint appeals did not go their way. You can see a theme for Senator Salmon. She doesn't trust school districts or public libraries and feels it is necessary to escalate the situation by allowing a parent to sue if their opinion does not match teachers, librarians, administrators, and school board members. This bill will need to get passed by the Senate Education Committee to continue. So we'll need to be watching whether that happens.
I was already really concerned about our public schools and who would want to come here and teach in Iowa. And I just can't imagine that being sued by families is high on anyone's list for career goals.
Not at all.
Well, what's next? What are you keeping an eye on this week then?
Yeah, I'm really strongly looking at Senate File 394. It's already funnel proof. I'd like to see whether it ends up passing the Senate and then what the House decides to do with it. This involves, many folks have been following this bill. Actually, involves glyphosate or Roundup.
Yep.
Now, this is considered a carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. So this is a European-based agency. However, the US EPA currently disagrees with that opinion. So Bayer, the maker of Roundup, does not have to label the herbicide as cancer causing. But you know what? Bayer has also been successfully sued for billions of dollars in damages over Roundup and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cases. So this is an important bill for Bayer because it would remove the ability of Iowans to sue pesticide manufacturers for causing their cancer if the chemical has been sufficiently labeled per the EPA.
Didn't this bill pass the Senate last year?
It did, and the House didn't take it up. So
Okay.
I think this is really something that we're going to see a repeat. And the question is, what will the House do?
Right.
So
Looking
now,
at you.
yeah, please be aware of the scope of this bill, Emily. It would not just prevent Iowans from suing Bayer over Roundup causing their cancer. It would include any pesticide, herbicide, or fungicide that is sufficiently labeled from being sued as well. Even if, oops, later on found out the EPA was wrong, even if courts have previously sided with the claimants. The argument from Bayer, Senate Republicans, is that passing this law will minimize meritless lawsuits. I don't know about that. I guess the court wants, or I guess they want court dockets clear for suing librarians and school officials.
It's really sad because here in Iowa, we have one of the fastest growing rates of cancer in the country.
We do.
We've got massive issues with pollution and groundwater safety. And here we are trying to exempt a multinational billion-dollar company from being responsible for potentially harmful products. Wow.
Yeah, it
Who do
makes
these
me
legislators work for?
exactly. I don't know that they have our best interest in mind.
Yikes. Well, unfortunately, that's not the only way that the legislature is representing their poor understanding of causes of cancer right now. Senate File 304 is a bill that disallows youth from opting in for the life-saving HPV vaccine. Now, I really question if our legislators understand the big picture of what's happening in Iowa. Every single day, I talk to my patients about the possibilities and the risks of cervical, anal, throat cancers, and how HPV vaccination can really eliminate those risks. Now, in fact, before I was a physician, I worked in research and I worked on a clinical trial for the HPV vaccine. And the trial had to be extended over and over again because not enough people were getting disease after having the vaccine. We know that it's safe and really effective. And for any woman who's ever gone through a colposcopy or a cervical biopsy, you really want more young people to have to face that fear? I really think this is a poorly guided bill to try to give parents more control over children, but unfortunately, it acts against our goal of reducing cancer rates in the state.
Yeah, and this goes along the theme of fighting against vaccines. And we've got the outbreak of measles in Texas. We've got another bill that we did mention that would block the ability to vaccinate using gene-based vaccines, which boy, that would affect everything from like polio to our COVID vaccine. This would be an enormous mistake to move such legislative ideas through Funnel Week.
I think that we really need to focus in this state of giving people the opportunity and the tools to advocate for themselves. And it's worth noting that this week we saw a direct attack on the Iowa motto: our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain, when both the Senate and the House passed a bill that removed gender identity from the Iowa Civil Rights Act. 2,500 people in protest at the Capitol, one of the largest protests in the history, and Iowa still became the first state in the nation to remove a status from civil rights protections. Why? What gives? What benefit is there? Trans people of Iowa, we are with you.
Absolutely.
And these deeply personal decisions about your own identity are yours to make and yours alone. There are a lot of people here supporting you.
Well said, Emily.
Thank you.
Well, there's a lot of work to be done and following what the legislature is doing. So let's keep our focus, and please, everybody, pay attention to what's happening down in Des Moines and at the national level. Know that together we are strong. It was amazing to see 2,500 people in the rotunda chanting. It certainly was uplifting. Unfortunately, the outcome didn't go, but I like the mobilization,
Absolutely.
and together we united we can make a change. So let's keep our spirits high on that front.
Absolutely. Stay kind, Iowa.
Be well.